Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 153rd episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And August's theme is all about arts and mental health. So on today's episode, I'm going to be kicking off about how the arts supports our mental health. Now, is this your first show or are you a regular listener? If you enjoy this episode, then please, why not leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So earlier this year, in April 2022, I covered music and mental health, and it was a really popular series. If you're interested, please go and check out episodes 136, 137, 138, and 139. And I do talk to the wonderful drum and bass musician Mike Kiss in episode 139. I speak to a music therapist, Crystal Luke Worrell. I talk about how music boosts our mental health. And I also provide a really interesting insight into tunes that boost my mental health with a link to the playlist. So building on that, I wanted to cover this idea of the arts and mental health in greater detail. So firstly, let's define the term the arts. So it could be defined as the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting, sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power through their aesthetic visuals. So an example would be, we might think about modern art or art of the Renaissance. It could be writing, and it's various branches of creative activity such as painting, music, which of course I've already covered, literature and dance. And I've got a couple of episodes on dance as well, which you might like to check out, and one with Ella Mesmer and Ama Rouge. But in this series, I'm going to be defining arts as painting, writing, drawing, crafting, and creating visually aesthetically pleasing things. So engaging in arts, social activities, and interactions within our communities can really help with things like isolation and loneliness and premature aging and feeling distant from community. It can indeed help to boost confidence because you're not only engaging its motor neuron coordination, it's also creating something, and it makes us feel more resilient because we are in that state of flow and we're able to pour our emotions into something tangible and beautiful. It has been shown that art engagement also alleviates anxiety, depression, and stress. But it's important to note that feeling creative isn't something you can necessarily force. So it's about that process of being creative, how you come to being creative, that really can help. And it's also not about the final product. So many of us may have not done art or drawing or writing since school. And we feel like, oh, we're not good enough. But you don't have to create the world's next masterpiece to reap the benefits, although indeed that might be something that you do. And it is about starting small, what's in your capacity, and increasing that. It could be cutting out pictures from a magazine and sticking them on some paper and putting glitter on it. Absolutely. But it's about carving out that time for these creative activities. And it could also be coloring in. Maybe you're journaling. Maybe some of you journal, and that's your creative process. And as I always talk about, learning a new skill as part of the 5 ways to well-being. And adults are far more concerned, aren't they, with everything being perfect, because we're really worried about being judged or people asking us, what have you done with your time? And for us to have to be accountable and show that we're productive all the time. But do you remember as a child, did you feel more fearless when it came to doing things? We would just pick up coloring pencils and color, or, potato prints or anything that you did. And did you feel more free, like there was a freeing activity when you did that? So it's really about giving yourself that permission to relax and enjoy that creative process. And researchers have used biofeedback to study the effects of visual art on neural circuits and neuroendocrine markers to find biological evidence that visual art promotes health, wellness, and fosters adaptive responsive to stress. So I've put some links in the show notes to those articles because you might be interested. And I'm going to pick up on some pieces of research and work to demonstrate from my reading that it does indeed have evidence-based approach. So firstly, the fact that engaging with arts, even if we're not doing it ourselves, actually boosts mental well-being. So there's some research published by University College London, UCL, called March, all in capitals, Mental Health Network, which was formed in 2018. And some of the members of that group included the Craft Council and the Museums Association. And this paper showed that engaging with visual arts can reduce reported anxiety and that visiting museums can protect against dementia's development. And in this work, authored by Dr. Daisy Fancourt, she's actually quoted as saying, cultural activities encourage gentle movement, reduce social isolation, and lower inflammation in the body, and inflammation caused by stress hormones such as cortisol. And the arts are actually linked with dopamine release, which encourages cognitive flexibility, thus reducing our risk of dementia. A study by Arts and Minds, a leading arts and mental health charity in Cambridgeshire, so this was more around doing the art, showed that art workshops, people who participated in them, showed a 71% decrease in feelings of anxiety and a 73% fall in depression. And 76% of the participants said that their well-being increased and 69% felt more socially included, which is incredibly significant, isn't it? The second thing is that craft has long been used to help with anxiety. So craft courses have actually been prescribed to patients in the UK since the dawn of occupational therapy in the late 19th century. And one of the key elements of that was basketry, so making baskets to relieve anxiety and physical ailments in soldiers during the First World War. And interestingly, they continue to be used today with groups such as Combat Stress, the UK charity for veterans' mental health, offering pottery classes. So Craig Mealing, this is a piece from the Arts Council, an ex-soldier from Essex who is experienced and suffered PTSD, turned pottery into a career after an introductory course through this charity. And he said, working with clay is the ideal distraction for keeping me off the drink. It's hard to throw a pot with a can of Foster's in my hand. I find it relaxing and it helps to reduce my anxiety. So, really, really, I think very powerful quote there. Third thing is it disrupts social isolation and brings people together. So you might have heard about crafts clubs. There might be cafes where you live where I often see groups of knitters in the window knitting away. I'm part of a book group, and yes, that's not creative in and of itself, but that kind of camaraderie and that discussion that it brings. And this year I've actually taken to doing a bit of creative writing in an online format in a group. And actually I have found it's very, very useful in processing certain things that happen and that go on. And there are lots of craft clubs that are specifically aimed at boosting mental health. Crocheting is also another aspect of that. And number 4, there are positive links between craft and the cognitive skills of stroke and dementia patients. So anthropologist Stephanie Bunn has been working in hospitals to study how basket making, spatial and gestural practices are important for the development of cognitive skills. And she talks about the work which she did she studied patients at Regmore Hospital in Inverness and looked at stroke recovery. And from her work, she says basket work can reestablish neural pathways and improve brain plasticity. Basket work can do the same things for people with dementia as well as trigger hand memories, which is something that I've been working on in a project in Lewis. So the link is in the show notes. This is a Crafts Council article, and there are lots of links to the different papers. But it's very clear that there is research done on this and the alleviation and the positivity that it brings to people's lives. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of this podcast and you want to keep up to date. Then why not join my bi-monthly newsletter? When you join, you'll receive a free copy of my ebook, The Mentally Healthy Leading Manager. And if you want to join, the link is bit.ly/DMSYNR. Okay, so what can we do then to think about the arts in the broadest way and in a simple way? And of course, we are in the midst of a cost of living crisis, and it's not feasible for everyone to go to art shops and buy enormous amounts of products because they are expensive. But what about just taking a pen or pencil and a piece of rough paper and just doodling? So you could do this when you're on the phone, if you're, talking to a family member, you can just doodle, and that is a way of actually alleviating things. Maybe you have children in your life, in your home. Can you borrow some of their paints and just do a bit of painting? And again, this is not about it being a masterpiece. Back in the day when we didn't have mobile phones, we had to all have cameras. And now most of us do have mobile phones with cameras, even if it's a basic phone. So what about going out for a walk and taking some photographs, things that catch your eye? Again, you don't have to show it to anyone, but it is about that sort of pleasing sense and coming up with a composition. When you're doing your painting or drawing or photography, why not listen to music in the background as well? Writing stories or poetry. And this is not about it being a published work of art, but writing down how you're feeling. It could be a haiku, which is 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Crafting. So is there a project that you do that you need to finish? Is it even about cutting up some old clothes and sort of stitching them back together in a mini quilt? And it doesn't have to be really expensive or time consuming things. And in order to help you, think about, what's the one thing that you would like to focus on? And maybe you're not sure, but then I would say, think back as a child to what you enjoyed. And is there a sort of short taster course that you can join in on? And summer's a really good time in the UK because there are lots of little taster courses. We have lots of summer fairs going on. Often if you go to festivals, there will be basket weaving, interestingly. I think it was dying out. I feel like it's come back slightly into the fold. If there's sort of social media platforms you're on and groups you're part of, why not put a message out there and saying, are there any creative taster courses going on that I could join in with? And see what you like. And even if you don't like any of it, at least you've given it a go and you can get a sense of that feeling of wonderment that we used to experience in art lessons at school, many of us. It's also about embracing mistakes, isn't it? And you know what I always say, don't you? It's the miss-takes. So it's not about doing it wrong, but it's saying, I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. You don't have to feel like you have to spend a fortune, but it is about creating a positive environment to get that creative mindset flowing. No one ever has to see it or even know that you're doing it. So why not give it a go and reflect then on how it makes you feel? So the way in which art supports our mental health is it enables us to relieve stress by engaging in an activity that provides a distraction. We're focused on something else. It enables us to calm down and think more clearly. It helps boost our self-esteem because we can do something new and achieve something and complete something small, which gives us a sense of accomplishment and also makes us think, hey, I'm not so bad at this. It encourages creative thinking. With being creative or art in its widest sense, there is no right or wrong. Instead, it's more about how you can show your unique talents, pour out your emotion into something else. We don't have to ruminate. And that process of creating really helps us come up with innovative solutions and unique ideas, which can help our everyday life. And of course, it enhances our quality of life, whether we've been patients or have experienced dementia or are experiencing dementia or supporting someone through it. It's known that it gives us a lot of cognitive abilities and also creates that connection with other people and really helps us move us away from social isolation. So I really hope you've enjoyed this. Do check out my other episodes that I mentioned on music, and the resources are the Crafts Council story about 4 reasons crafting is good for your mental health. The Conversations piece on brain research shows the arts promotes mental health, and also Paintings in Hospitals, 70 ways art improves our mental health. And that's a really good one because it shows all the different ways and it goes into arts for specific groups. So if you enjoyed it, please, why not leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast from. And I will see you in the next episode where I'm going to be reviewing the book, Big Magic, How to Live a Creative Life by Elizabeth Gilbert. Until then, take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.